Good morning, Vandal fans, and welcome to Sunday's edition of Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and I'm joined along with Luis the Godfather Torres. Today we'll be discussing some men's and women's basketball results, some women's tennis results, and give our thoughts on the Pro Bowl and the upcoming Super Bowl next weekend. But first, we turn our attention to last night's matchup. The Idaho men's basketball team faced off. They hosted Portland State in the Cowan Spectrum in a very low-scoring matchup. And Luis, what were your initial thoughts from the game?
I was thinking initially, before going in, it was going to be probably a long night for Idaho after what happened in their last outing against Sacramento State. And I was more curious who was going to be starting because they're still trying to get the whole guard system to be up and running without Victor Sanders and Perrion Calendret. But as the game progressed, I felt like it was going to be very low scoring. And nobody seemed to be getting going. Nobody really had a dominant run, to be quite honest. They had a little run, like about a 3 or 4 point run, and then after that, either Idaho or Portland State were catching up real quick. So it was a close game all around, and that's what happens when you have pretty much a relatively low scoring game. Because I think I predicted it would be 72-64 in favor of Portland State, but then as the game progressed, it seemed like Idaho was hanging in there. It's like that's what they kind of needed. If they did not let Portland State, or the Vikings for that matter, score that many points, they'll still be in it. They were in it pretty much the entire time. And then what hurt Idaho in the last two games to get the win were free throws, and then it turned out to be free throws were once again a factor of the ending. This time, Idaho's Chris Sarball pretty much got it done, and we got a 56-55 victory. But I was not really expecting necessarily a good outcome. I was thinking more of a learning curve rather than a positive outcome. But it was pretty much a little bit of both, a learning outcome, and we won the game, which was very crucial.
Yes, it was a very low-scoring game. At halftime, the two teams, Idaho had 26 points, Portland State had 24. I know in the arena they were advertising if the Vandals scored over 73 points, people would be getting a free dinner from Wendy's, but that was definitely not the case. Very low-scoring matchup with the Vandals missing their two leading scorers in Perrion Calendret, who's out with a foot injury, and Victor Sanders, who's out with a calf injury. It was really interesting to see, Luis, watching the game. Those two guys, they're wearing their medical casts, yet they're standing up, they're walking the sidelines, and they're yelling at teammates and giving them guidance and kind of encouragement throughout the game.
And that's what the basketball team needs, or any sport. If you have your top two scorers down, sometimes they'll feel very devastated. They don't even show up, but it's kind of like really encouraging when you have those two guys who have not played for quite some time due to unfortunate circumstances rooting the other guys going. It kind of shows you how the team is really well established. When you think about it, you would imagine that it probably not be the case because we don't really see it on the road because not many people have access to watch it or don't have time. But when they come at home, they really showed it, and it kind of tells the fans who were there at the Cowan Spectrum that they're going to fight through this. They're going to stick together as a team, and I think that's the little things really help. And I think if they continue to play that role, I think they'll still be effective.
I think what was really also intriguing to see is that the team's leading scorer in this matchup was Nate Sherwood. Most of the time we hear about Chad Sherwood, the walk-on guard, who has at times been electric for Idaho, but his brother, redshirt freshman Nate Sherwood, scored 15 points for the Vandals and kind of took it over at the forward position, something that I think they really needed after the absence of those perimeter guards. But he had 15, and who else? Nick Blair had 6 points in the first half. Ty Egbert had a good game defensively. Verlin noted that. But senior Chris Sarbah, the transfer, comes in, not necessarily known for being a scorer. Late in the game, the Vandals are down 1 point. Portland State's attempting to run out the shot clock. They put up a late shot with about 11 seconds left in the game. There's an ensuing scramble for the ball, and Sarbah's fouled going for the rebound. He goes to the line for two pivotal free throws, and he nails them both to put Idaho up 56-55. And Luis, we don't normally see him score. Most of the time he's kind of a glue guy. He provides a lot of assists to his teammates. What did you like about him stepping up to the line there, especially, as you mentioned, in the last two games, the Vandals losing because of free throws that they couldn't convert?
I think what really helps is that you have like a guy who's been playing a lot of minutes this season, given the opportunity to go under the line, who is pretty much basically comfortable where he is at. He's really content where he is as a leader or basically as his role for that matter. That he pretty much he may have been a little bit pressured, but I think he being there multiple times, I would imagine, from different schools in different situations. He's probably one guy you did not want to have. If you were Portland State, you're probably one guy you did not want to have is a guy who's pretty much been through a lot of situations, who's pretty much understands the game, and like I mentioned in the past, even in articles for the Argonaut, that he's kind of like the guy that kind of keeps the whole thing together. And I mentioned like without Sanders and Calendret, Sarbo is probably going to be the one guy that's going to kind of keep it together for everybody else because, like I mentioned, I bring it up a lot of times. Like this is like his year to prove that it's kind of a year of proving himself that he is like a playmaker. And I say free throws is definitely a huge part of being a playmaker, especially when you make the baskets very effectively and pretty much convert all your free throws at a high rate. And basically, Portland State did not really wanted like a guy like Sarbo into the free throw line or even foul, and it kind of proved costly to Portland State. They tried to go for the shot near the end for the win, but it was short. With pretty much did not get inside of the rim. But overall, it's like the thing about Sarbo is that he's pretty much consistent, quiet but consistent, yet very effective. It's kind of like one of those. It's the old phrase, silent but yet effective when it comes to shooting range and all that stuff. So it's like you needed a guy like Harbaugh to turn the season around as it pertains to late game or at this point game winning free throws.
And what's interesting, that final play for the Vandals, Don Verlin said that the team chose to employ a traditional defense during the final play of the game. Now, Portland State got the ball back with 10.2 seconds left to play. They tried to run a play unsuccessfully, I might add, and took a timeout with 2.8 seconds left in the game before trying that last second three-pointer. And Don Verlin said in the press conference after the game, quote, "We put our normal rule defense and had Ty jump the ball. Said we had to contest every shot without a foul," end quote. And it was interesting to see that Ty was the one who jumped out to try and cover that three-pointer. And Zach Gangler for Portland State got a very good look, I think. His shot was just a little too much power, a little too much mustard, and hit the back of the rim.
No, that's from afar, and that's what it looked like. And I think that Portland State knew they got to go for three to win, or otherwise it would be gone to overtime. Then it probably would have been more of a different score. Obviously, when it comes to overtime, you get more opportunities to score. But yeah, I think he kind of a little bit overshot it, and it just kind of came up short. But it has to show you that a big man like Ty Egbert can really intimidate the opponent, especially when there's a height differential.
Now, the Vandals at one point were down 50-43 after a scoring drought of 3 minutes, down 7 points in a low-scoring game. And I asked Don Verlin in the press conference after the game, what did you guys do? Like, what was your mentality? And he said it wasn't anything different, just that the team knew that they could come back from this. He said, quote, "We could have very easily quit there when we were down 6 or 7, but I thought we really dug in and found a way to get it done," end quote. The Vandals did just that in that second half, just on the defensive end. In these low-scoring matchups, every point is just that much more critical. And for the Vandals to be down 7 with just a couple minutes left in the game and to come back, I mean, they've come back in the previous matchups that they've been down by quite a bit, but tonight they actually got it done and converted and earned another Big Sky victory. I believe they are now 5-4 in the Big Sky Conference, 13-9 overall.
Yeah, that sounds right, because I said it was 4-4 on. Yeah, they should be 5-4, 13-9. Yeah, and like considering that 7 points is the deficit, it's kind of relatively when a low-scoring game, it sounds a lot, but compared to others, this was kind of like a game that if you guys get on a run, then boom, you'll be back in it. And that's pretty much what it was all game long. So basically, 7 points is to trail back from 7 points and win the whole game. it comes to show you that they've been those games in the past where they faced a larger deficits has really helped them, and I think it's kind of weird when you think about it, but it is true that that when you trail by a certain amount of points and you actually try to make an attempt, the wins will come for you if the time comes right. At this time, the free throws were in their favor, unlike the last two games, and like I said, and like you mentioned on Friday, that had those free throws would have been made, and we would have won those two games against Montana State and Sacramento State, we would have been in a different situation. This one would probably kind of show that even without the top scorers, they can still go. There's still a little bit of improvement with the guards and everything, kind of like adapting to a different playmaking decision without those two top scorers. Then probably would have been totally fine. But this one kind of boosts their morale after what could have probably been a disastrous month. And it's safe to say that the month of January ended on a high note, rather than in a month basically that has not been so great, other than a couple wins then and there, including Montana.
True, and looking at their Vandals schedule, they next face Southern Utah on the road in Cedar City on Thursday. So kind of a crucial part of the season for them. Will these kind of backup players be able to carry the team to a decent seed in the Big Sky tournament, or will the team fall? I think they did a good job yesterday getting the win, getting kind of some of the confidence and morale back for the team, despite the injuries to Perrion and Sanders, and hopefully they'll be able to come back and help the Vandals in crunch time. But for now, the men's basketball team is doing all that they can. And looking at the Big Sky Conference standings right now in the men's division, Montana leads the conference with an 8-1 record, the one loss coming to the Vandals. Weber State is second with a 7-1 record. Idaho State is third with a 5-3 record. And Idaho is currently tied for fourth with a 5-4 record. They're tied with Eastern Washington, North Dakota, and Northern Colorado. So really a battle there between four teams to decide, are you going to be towards the higher end of the spectrum or towards the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to rankings next month. Idaho's now 13-9 on the year, 6-4 at home, 6-4 away, 1-1 on a neutral site. So pretty consistent play no matter where the matchup is. But again, the Vandals will be traveling on the road without their two leading scorers in the lineup, and it'll be kind of a litmus test for the Vandals to see if they'll be able to come back and deliver that same kind of performance this next week as they did yesterday. But now we'll turn our attention to the women's basketball side. The team was also playing Portland State, but this time on the road yesterday, and they got it done, a 94-65 win over Portland State. They tied a school record with 17 three-pointers and boost the Idaho Vandals record to 15-6 overall, 7-2 in Big Sky Conference play. They also had a season-high 32 assists, and it's the most since 36 in the 1986 season, which also happened against Portland State, by the way. So freshman Taylor Pierce, after kind of a quiet couple of games, she led the three-point barrage with 4 threes. She also hit 3 of 4 attempts in the second half as opposed to the first half. She finished with a game-high 18 points, so it's good to see the freshmen kind of reemerge for the Vandals. Christina Salvatore and Michaela Ferenz each hit 3 trays on their own. So those 3 Vandals, right there, that's, 6, 10, that's 10 three-pointers. And, the fact that the rest of the team hit 7 is also impressive for a total of 17. Idaho shot 7 of 14 from three-point range in the third quarter alone. So it's not like this was just right off the bat and the team was able to grab such a huge lead. They grabbed it later in the game and really just kind of took it to them there down the stretch. And it was just an overall another dominating performance from the women's basketball team. They are playing a Portland State program that is 3-16 overall, 1-7 in Big Sky Conference play, but another win is crucial in when they're searching for that top seed. They're 7-2 right now in the standings, and I believe Montana State leads the conference with an 8-1 record. Eastern Washington also has an 8-1 record. Vandals right in there for the mix for that top seed. But it was really great to see Taylor Pierce kind of come back after a couple of quiet games from her. I think maybe she's just, as a freshman, you might not always be there and consistent the whole time, but it's good to see her kind of come back. Maybe the veteran leadership in the past couple of games, she learned from it to really score for the Vandals. And Luis, what are your thoughts from the matchup?
Well, regarding Pierce, like I said, Thursday was a really quiet game for her. Like I said, I think it was in the third quarter where she made her first points, which was a 3. And I think it kind of comes to show you that when they need Pierce, they'll utilize her to her full potential as a true freshman, for that matter. I think right now, kind of like after what she's been through basically in the last week, I think coming back Saturday rather than Thursday as a key contributor to the team might have been healthy for her. And as far as this win, they kind of keep on rolling. Like I said, if they keep rolling, they really are legitimate contenders, which they are without a doubt. They have pretty much a whole depth of players that can contribute. It seems like one game will be Taylor Pierce, the next one will be Carly Wilson or Michaela Ferencz. It seems like you obviously have your Geraldine McCorkles, your Allie Fords, and your Christina Salvatore. Who usually are the huge playmakers, but you still have other ladies that can still put up some points, really be a factor offense and defensively like this game or the last week in general. So this has been a really good week and kind of put themselves in true contendership for the number 1 spot in the Big Sky if things keep going like this.
Now Pierce scored to put the Vandals up 37 points in the fourth quarters, and then as the team led 73-36. You don't normally see those type of scores in game on either side, men's or women's, and just the Vandals in the fourth quarter really dominated. Largest lead of the game was Vandals 87, Portland State 49, a good 38-point difference. At that point, it's good to get some other players in to see some quality minutes against a Portland State program that is looking to kind of turn things around. Idaho's bench outscored the Vikings 48-35 on the day, and just kind of a quality win for John Newley and the Vandal program, keeping them in the hunt. Third seed's great, but he really wants that 1 or 2 seed, and we'll see what happens in the coming months if they're able to down the stretch really reel in some wins, maybe upset Montana State. I know that was a close matchup earlier this year, and it just kind of squirted away from them, and they'll be able to I think, really take it to them next time around and maybe surprise some folks. But now we'll turn our attention to women's tennis. The women's tennis team went on the road this weekend. They went to Eugene, Oregon to face the Ducks, a nationally ranked program, number 51 in the country. So really tough opponent, and it was evident in the match. The team fell 6-1 overall. Senior Rita Bermudez collected Idaho's lone points, and Coach Mariana Cobra said following the match, quote, "Oregon is a very strong team. They are very tough and consistent. They showed why they are a top-ranked team in the nation. I thought we did a good job of handling the challenge. We fought hard today." End quote. Now, the team, it was just, I kind of looked at the scores, and Oregon State, I believe, just has so much more depth than the Vandals. The Vandals were also playing without their number 1 spot, freshman Mariana Petrie, and that forced everybody to move up a spot in the lineup, which I think also impacted the Vandals because, that just means you're playing a tougher opponent than you usually would. And to lose your number 1 too is tough. I don't know what the story is behind that. I don't know if if it was personal or a team thing or if it's an injury, but for some reason she just wasn't able to play. And I'm not sure if that would have made a huge difference or not. But the Vandals, they kind of fell early. The Ducks set the tone with a 6-0 win to begin doubles play. The Oregon pair of Nia Rose and Alyssa Tabita defeated Claire Yang and Belen Barcinilla. And that kind of carried over into the second court where they earned the doubles point. They didn't even finish the third match because Oregon had already won the point. And, it just carried right over into singles play. Idaho fell in 5 of the following 6 matches. They actually only won the last match to gain that point, and that was on the number 4 court. So, tough day for the Vandals. Bermudez, though, had a good day in a tough matchup. She defeated Oregon's Micheline Albuquerque 6-3, 2-6, and 10-2 in 3 sets. So after the game, Oregon's head coach, Silverio said, "Idaho is a really tough team. They're talented with great players that compete really hard. They're always winning their conference and top in their conference. So for this to be our first home match and us be able to get it right away was exciting to see." End quote. Luis, what do you think of this in terms of the women's tennis program? Obviously one of the top in the Big Sky, kind of getting handled yesterday. Do you think they bounce back from it in their next match, or do you think this kind of impacts them for a little while, just kind of psychologically and as far as confidence goes?
I think when you consider that you're facing one of the nationally ranked teams of Oregon, it's a Pac-12 school. First off, yeah, just because it is a Pac-12, that doesn't mean it's going to be hard. Look at, for example, swimming team. We beat Oregon State. That is a Pac-12 team, but I think this, considering they're playing one of the more top teams in the country, I think it will help them, quite honestly. Obviously, for those who are not aware, the women's tennis are they're the defending Spring Big Sky Conference champions. So, and they were ranked number 2. They were expected to finish number 2 in preseason polls behind Sacramento State, who they beat for the championship game back last April. I think this will benefit them. I think if you play tougher opponents, I think it's been said in a lot of sports that if you face tougher opponents, then it will actually help you. But if you lost one of your key players for unknown reasons, which we don't really know, unlike other sports, who really knows if that will really affect them? If it's just temporary, then it probably won't affect them that much longer. But at the same time, these games are meant to be a challenge, and they kind of handled it just fine. It's just not an easy game when you're facing a tougher opponent. And I think coming out with at least with a win or a great showing, I think this comes to show you that they are competitive and they can still win in tougher situations, especially when you think they might be out of reach or already out of reach for that matter. You still have to fight till the very end, and they kind of did that regardless.
The women's tennis team will return to the court 3 p.m. Thursday against Seattle University in Pullman. So somewhat of a home match, not quite, but they will not have to travel as far for their next match. Meanwhile, the men's tennis team is in action today. They're facing UC Riverside in Lewiston. That is going on right now as we speak. So if you're going to be in the area, definitely check it out. But, we would talk about swim and dive, but the results from their Air Force Invitational have not been posted yet, so we won't talk about that. Instead, Luis, you're kind of following the UW invite for track and field. Can you just tell us a little bit about what was going on over the weekend and what Vandals kind of stood out to you?
Well, basically, like Coach Tim Colley said last week, they pretty much used the WSU Open as kind of like a little bit of a training meet to get ready for the big meet. Obviously, you have like the major schools out there, Washington, even Western Washington had a couple of guys out there. The reason why I know it because I know one of them in particular that competed in it. So, but then again, this is a Western Washington athlete I'm speaking, but it was not going to be necessarily easy. But given that they already had guys qualified for for the Big Sky Indoor Championships in a couple weeks in Missoula. For the others that still trying to qualify, they gotta get going. As far as one that stands out in particular that I really remember was Colsey Bates, who threw a personal record of 16.82 meters, which is a really good showing. That kind of show you that as the season progresses, they're getting better and better, which Collie said that's what he wants out of them. And so I would imagine he's proud of Bates. And she's been having a really solid season from the women's side, which normally you don't hear much from reports because it's usually guys like Drew Thompson, Jesse Valines, or Benaseu Ata that kind of makes the headlines, and they all had good showings. And if I remember correctly, Aseu Ata just came up short of finishing in the top 8. Let me pull up the article because I have it with me right now to be exact. All right, let me get it out there. Let's see, who was it? I think it was. Basically, it started with Jesse Belines and Zion. Before we get on to Aseu Ata, trying to figure out the information, but. Basically, Valines and Sion Stuffle kind of qualified for the 60-meter hurdles, qualified prelims, where, it was Valines that missed the top 8 spot to reach for the final, so he came close in the 60 hurdles. Aseu Ata kind of had a strong Friday by taking first in the 400 dash with a 47.22 second time. So he had, once again, another solid showing like he has been. After very much sitting out the year due to injury, that's what he told me when I interviewed him after the Vandal Indoor Invitation a couple of weeks ago. And another Idahoan, Kaiser Gillespie, finished just 2 seconds behind Aseu Ata with a 49.73 and pretty much placed inside the top 20. So it kind of shows you that they really had a nice showing. And as for Thompson, he out of the 7 events, he barely placed outside the top 10 in the heptathlon. So a couple of near close opportunities to get really some strong finishes, but they just came up short. But still, regardless, it's good to see the Idaho team compete with like the top schools like Washington and have really nice showings. Because it's not easy when you're competing in a highly level competitive indoor track and field like Washington and Seattle, or even in Washington State for that matter too, because you still have your guys like Lewis and Clark Community and Spokane and those other schools as well. So another Lauren Cornalis finished 7th in the long shot with a 4.96 meter, and Bates basically finished 4th in the women's shot put, but a personal best. So a couple of nice showings for Idaho and then really competitive indoor invitation like the Husky Classic, as they call it.
And it's good to see the Vandals kind of really doing well in track and field. For a long time it's been the men's and women's golf and tennis programs who've kind of stood out as far as being like our premier programs. And to see track and field really kind of step it up in recent weeks is just fantastic to see from an athletic perspective, and to see the hard work these students are putting into their sport really paying off. It's just great news. We'll turn our attention now to women's club hockey because that's what we went on the road to cover this weekend. We would give you men's club hockey results, but as of right now, we have not received contact back from their representatives or from the Boise State representatives of their team. So as soon as we know something, we will tweet on our Twitter account at Vandal Nation. Be sure to follow us for the latest updates in Idaho athletics. But we'll talk a little bit about the women's club hockey program. It's the first time I've ever went to kind of cover the club hockey team, and it was they went on the road to Cheney to face Eastern Washington, and I'm just going to start this out by saying that I was very surprised by the facilities that Eastern Washington has. Their ice rink is part of their student recreational center, kind of like what the University of Idaho has as far as working out. They just have an ice rink in the middle of it, and quite a few number of stands, couple hundred I believe, and just really pristine facilities. Great opportunity for the Vandals to play on a full-size regulation rink, although that did prove to be detrimental to the team. Normally they're practicing on a 3/4 or a 3/4 size rink, and it appeared to fatigue the Vandals late in the game. The team came out and fell to Eastern Washington 4-1. The Eagles scored back-to-back goals in the first period to really seize control of the game, and from that moment, I believe it was just a little bit too much for the Vandals to overcome. Idaho captain Lizzie Josie said, "I definitely think we're not really used to big ice. It took us a while to get into a groove," end quote. And that kind of was apparent. Idaho had a quick tempo offense to begin the game in the opening minutes of the match, but Eastern Washington responded with several counterattacks that I believe kind of caught Idaho off guard. Eastern Washington captain Brooke Bogart opened up the scoring. Midway through the first period, after a give and go opened up a hole in the Vandal defense. She was able to slip the puck past the outstretched foot of the Vandal goaltender to give the Eagles a 1-0 lead. She found the net a second time with a little forehand to backhand move to force movement to the left on a breakaway, and she fired the puck into the right side of the net. Really easy to play for her. The Eagles actually scored again with 1.2 seconds left in the first period on another breakaway, but the referees waved off the goal because the net became dislodged during play, so the Vandals trailed 2-0 heading into the second period.
Now explain for those who are not aware what it means by the net dislodge.
So the net in hockey is not like a net you would see in soccer. It becomes dislodged because you don't want somebody to run into the goalie going full speed and have the goalie hit the net and have that not be able to give way, because then you're putting the goalie's his health in jeopardy. If, like, say something like a foot or an arm gets caught, it'd be very easy to break. So what they do is they have, I don't know if it's magnets or just a little groove where they can set the net in, and that's where it sits. But if something impacts the net with enough force, it just knocks the net off and it kind of slides backwards a few feet and out of the way. Very easy to transport and stuff. And you see it happen quite a bit if you watch any Major League hockey games. I'd say it happens 1 or 2 times a night at least. It's a very consistent thing, and I believe that's what happened on the play. There was no official explanation given to the press, but they did wave off that goal, and I think that helped Idaho out a little bit as far as confidence, because instead of being down 3-0, which is really difficult to overcome after one period, they were down just 2-0. Bogart said after the game, quote, "I think that fatigue started to hit them, and we just got some lucky breaks," end quotes. Freshman Katie Schulte was able to put the Vandals on the board in the third period. The two teams kind of was like a very even-paced second period. Neither was giving, neither was relenting, but neither was really like attacking full force. But Katie Schulte scored in the third period an unassisted backhanded goal to cut the score to 2-1. She said after the game, quote, "I think our line just got super motivated. Kiana and I started to cycle really well and work together. I think our teamwork and the way our line played really helped out," end quotes. And for a minute there, it looked like Idaho might be able to mount an attack, but for 10 minutes they didn't score. And so team captain Lizzie Josie appeared to kind of push the Vandals to have a quicker tempo on the ice, kind of really leading by example. When fatigue hits, you can kind of see the athletes kind of like, you can tell it affects them. They're going a little bit sluggish or slow, and she was skating hard, trying to get her team to do that as well. But what happens is if you attack offensively with full force, trying to get that goal, it leaves the opportunity for a breakaway, and that's what happened. Again, in the closing minutes, Brooke Bogart was able to steal the puck from the Vandals and had another breakaway scoring opportunity, and earned a hat trick with her third goal of the night. And she said, "A couple of those were breakaways that hit me coming out of the zone, and I just got lucky on opportunities," end quote. And from that point on, both teams knew the game was over, but Eastern Washington did tack on a fourth goal with 57.4 seconds left in the game. Megan Dufour scored a goal off of a rebound that bounced off the goalie and was able to put that in the net for the Eagles to give them the 4-1 victory. It improves the Eagles' record in the spring season to 2-1. Vandals fall to 0-1 in the spring season. Schulte, after the game, this is a freshman who scored for the Vandals, said, "We're not used to playing on such big ice, so I definitely think that was a factor. I think we're going to have to learn how to practice and cycle a lot better and learn how to not get tired so fast," end quotes. I know, Luis, you weren't there. You didn't get to see too much of it, but just kind of hearing a brief recap, what are your thoughts on the women's club hockey team and kind of, it was a lengthy road trip. It was early in the morning, but do you think that played a factor in it? Do you think it was just fatigue from their facilities or what?
It's probably mostly facility. If they play like a much smaller ice rink to practice, it'll probably affect you in the long. And when it comes to game time, when you're playing one of the larger ice rinks, I think that would have something to do with it. And I could probably imagine. And also, it's kind of like the first game jitters, if there is just such a thing, that probably may have been a factor. And plus, it's like. It's kind of like a learning ground of like when you're not used to something, it's going to be difficult to adapt right away. So I think what they got to do during practice is kind of like find a way to kind of improve their fatigue so the next game for the next couple of games coming up, they don't feel as fatigued as they did last time around against Eastern Washington.
So the women's club hockey team will travel on the road to compete in the Palouse Care Cup in Lewiston from February 12th to 14th. That will be their next matchup. And then I believe after that they play in the Chicks with Sticks tournament, but I am not 100% sure, so we will wait to hear back from their team captain and representative as far as their schedule. And as of right now, that's the full update on Vandal Athletics. And Luis and I will talk some men's and we'll talk some alumni with Shiloh Keo being in the Super Bowl and some Pro Bowl. And we'll play a quick little game on our show coming up after the break. You're listening to 4th and Downtown on KUOI 89.3 FM Moscow. And we are back, Vandal fans. You are listening to 4th and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and I'm joined with Luis, the Godfather Torres. And Luis, we've talked about Vandal Athletics. Let's talk about an alumni. Shiloh Keo will play in Super Bowl 50 for the Denver Broncos at strong safety. Kind of a slew of injuries to the Broncos have forced the team to make some free agent signings, and he was one of them. He's kind of had an impact for the program. He recovered the onside kick in the AFC Championship to seal the win for the Denver Broncos. Do you think he plays a factor in Super Bowl 50 against Cam Newton and the Panthers' defense?
I see he's got to be a factor. He's kind of shown in big games or critical games so far as a Bronco that he's out there to perform. He can be a playmaker. I think when it comes to the Super Bowl, if the time arises, I think he'll be a factor. As far as my bold prediction, I think he'll probably make a key play that will benefit Denver. That is only if Denver are in a situation where they have the lead in the closing games and Carolina are trying to make a comeback. I think that's where I see Keo making that explosive presence like he has been in games like against San Diego to clinch Denver the number one spot in the AFC and the onside kick that give the Broncos the Super Bowl 50 berth. That's my bold prediction as far as Shiloh Keo, that it will be late in the game that he'll make that big play.
Bold prediction from Luis Torres says Shiloh Keo will make a key impact late in the Super Bowl if the Broncos are winning. Right now, the Broncos are in California. They're practicing on Stanford's football field, kind of a place that John Elway used to practice on. And they'll be preparing for Super Bowl 50 next week. It is in Santa Clara, California. Tickets right now on StubHub are currently $2,800 for the cheapest seats at Super Bowl 50. That is quite a bit, folks.
Wasn't like the first Super Bowl, like, I know different times and probably the inflation rate would be massively high, like $20 back then.
True. Correction. Seats are now selling for $2,600 on StubHub for the Super Bowl tickets. Yeah, it's a little bit less, so get yours while they're hot. This is quite a little bit different than last year when ticket prices went through the roof. because of the secondary market and kind of the situation that was going on there.
And probably because like it was in Arizona, and I think Seattle and Arizona were much closer, and you had like New England and Tom Brady. I think obviously the prices were going to be high when you have the defending Super Bowl champ and probably arguably one of the best all-around teams in the last decade, arguably by some people, because there's some that think this one team are better than the New England, but that depends on your preference. That depends who you root against, which in my book would probably not be New England as far as my rooting interests.
True. All right, Luis, we're going to play a little game in our closing minutes here. We're going to call it Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down. I'm going to give you an event going on on like some sort of sports network tonight, some sort of sporting event. You're going to tell me why you give it a thumbs up or neutral or a thumbs down and why. And to start it off, we're going to say the soccer friendly. The United States faces Iceland at 12:45 p.m. on ESPN2. Luis, thumbs up, thumbs down, something you're going to tune into or not?
Thumbs down as it pertains to watching, because here's the thing. It's Iceland. It should be a shoo-in victory. Even I say 1-0 U.S. versus Iceland. So pretty much I can sense that it's going to be... Is Iceland. When was the last time that Iceland made it to the World Cup? I usually base teams on how they've done over the last 2 or 3 World Cups. And Iceland has not been one of those teams that are like a premier soccer team. So I think it's going to be U.S. winning it. But would it be intriguing to watch? Probably not, considering that, like what I just said.
I want to say thumbs down. The United States team has really struggled, I think, with chemistry or figuring out their coaching position. Shouldn't be an easy win for them, but honestly, I want them to face some tests, face some tough teams, face Mexico or face Germany or some programs where they really need to learn. Right now is not a time to go into a lull as far as playing some easier opponents, and I think that might be the case right now. Maybe a little resume booster for Jurgen Klinsmann, but we will.
Yeah, like if you play if you play Colombia, I think that will be a challenge within itself, because this is like a vastly different Colombia team that has been in the past 20 years.
All right, so Luis, for our second edition, thumbs up or thumbs down, Bulls and Clippers on ABC at 12:30. The Clippers are favored by 5. Are you intrigued or not intrigued?
Sort of intrigued, since it is Chicago, and at least the Clippers are actually a good team, because they've been historically known as being one of the worser teams in the NBA. So this is probably a pivotal time to watch some Clippers game when they're relatively at their peak or at their prime that they've ever been. But I'll be a neutral when it comes to that game, but just mainly because it is Chicago, and it'll be interesting how they'll do.
I am going to say thumbs up. I'm a little interested in this. I think that how the Clippers respond to the Blake Griffin situation will speak volumes about the team. I don't think they're going to win the West. I don't think it's possible. You have the Spurs, you have the Golden State Warriors in your league. No, you're not going to.
It's pretty much. I think it's already been decided. It's going to come down to San Antonio. It's going to come down to San Antonio and Golden State. So it's pretty much battling for playoff spots at this point, going before the All-Star break.
Yeah, basically the rest of the teams are just playing who will play Golden State and San Antonio last as far as the preliminary playoff rankings. But I think this situation with what happened with Blake Griffin punching an equipment manager, and then after the 2 exchange words, and then following the guy outside and punching him again. Like, why has this guy not received more attention for that? You look at the Ray Rice situation, and
it's probably. Here's this thing. It's probably because I'm not sure what gender the equipment manager.
He's a male.
Okay,
they're,
I think that's
good friends.
Yeah, either Blake did it as a rib, or because they know each other really well, or something might have rattled.
Well, it definitely wasn't a rib. Blake Griffin broke his hand. So, I mean, obviously, this wasn't like a playful thing. Like, he literally punched him.
That's one of the things. One of the things, like, when it comes to media, it seems like they only report in like intergender beatings rather than equal gender, like a guy beating up a guy. You pretty much hear it any other day. It's kind of common stuff. You don't hear about it. And I'm surprised, like when you have like Blake Griffin, probably one of the topper stars in the NBA right now, getting involved in this altercation. It's like no, and it's not getting that much notoriety compared to the Ray Rice. Obviously, it kind of comes down to obviously because most people hear about domestic violence from the opposite gender rather than one gender, which is probably why not many people have talked about it. But if you consider it done it twice, Brock is saying you not only hurt yourself, you hurt the establishment, the organization, because they're still on damage control after what happened with the whole Don Sterling case. This is not good news for the Clippers whatsoever. And in a time where the Clippers are actually a good basketball team, unlike in the past several decades. And this kind of does not help the whole reputation for the Clippers after they're slowly recovering from the whole Don Sterling situation a couple years back.
So, Luis, your final analysis: thumbs up or thumbs down on the matchup? I don't think you ever quite told us.
I gave neutral.
Neutral? Okay.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I gave neutral earlier.
All right, and for our final game of the day, the event, thumbs up or thumbs down, Luis? The Pro Bowl taking place at 4 p.m. on ESPN. It's in Hawaii. Team Rice versus Team Irvin. They've done away with the conferences playing each other. So, is this something you're interested in? Will you tune in at 4 p.m., Luis?
Probably not, since here's the thing. When it comes to the Pro Bowl, I may tune in to watch per se, but it's like the Pro Bowl has been given like a bad rep. It's like if some people see it as a meaningless game. Like you don't necessarily see the best players, the ones that are really strong. One, because probably the Super Bowl. Two, they're injured, or three, after their losses in championship or during the playoffs may have lost value or interest of an individual. Like I remember back in the day, it used to be after the Super Bowl where you probably would get a couple guys who played in the Super Bowl in it, but I think the only intrigue level is that you have two Hall of Famers picking the players with the whole Pro Bowl draft thing and see who has the better mindset or who they got. So that's the only interest I see. It's kind of like who had the better choices, either Jerry Rice or Michael Irvin.
I'm going to say thumbs up. I'm going to tell you my reason why, and then I'm going to explain also some of the negatives that I have about it. Positives, I'm holding on to any last shred of football season. It's just about February, and I know for a while I'm going to be without football, and it's always a really, really, really tough few months without it. And this gives me like a little glimmer of, we're still in football season. Another reason I want to watch it is because of the Seahawks in it. The Seahawks got eliminated by the Panthers, but this is one last time to watch Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman, I think it was Bobby Wagner, Tyler Lockett, and a bunch of other Seahawks players kind of play in one last game. They'll be facing against each other on different teams, but it's always good to watch your favorite players out there on the field for one last time this season. Some of the beefs that I have with the Pro Bowl overall, it's obvious that the guys don't try, and that makes sense. They're not trying to get injured. They're not tackling as hard. They're kind of like just falling down. But I kind of want to be entertained by the game, and generally the Pro Bowl's not. Last year was an exception. It came down to like the final plays. Team Irvin came away with the victory. It was a little... After watching the first half, it was not entertaining at all, but watching the second half, it picked up. There was a little bit of a entertainment factor there, but I watch sports to kind of experience the thrill, to see these teams battle and compete, and that's not the Pro Bowl. Basically not any all-star game for any sport. Hockey, NBA, NFL.
Basically the only all-star game that really has like a major value is the Major League Baseball All-Star game, where the winner gets home field advantage.
True, and I think players actually play hard in that game, probably because they don't play as long, and there's not as many injuries and stuff. So you'll see Mike Trout like sprint out for trying to get a triple and all these things instead of like pulling up easily at second base. I mean, they're competing hard for that.
Yeah, like even way back when in San Francisco, when Ichiro Suzuki. Man, I can say
Suzuki.
Suzuki. It's like I'm saying it, but it won't come out all the way. But like Ichiro, when he did the inside the park home run in San Francisco, which you normally think that it's going to be easy, relatively easy, because of McCovey Cove and how the ballpark is laid down and everything, but even an inside the park home run, you gotta go all the way. So there's a lot of value when it comes to baseball. When it comes to football, it's kind of like enjoying the game, kind of have fun, or even with guys around the league that you normally don't get to because either you might have faced them or because yes, you're too focused on the regular season, trying to get into the postseason and the Super Bowl. But yes, as far as I can agree with get to see a couple Seahawks players in action. Still, kind of, it's one of those things like you still get to see them because that's how it kind of comes to show you how good Seattle, the football team, how good of a Seahawks football team it has been. That you get several of them playing the Pro Bowl. Obviously, it would have been nice to see them in the Super Bowl for the third straight year, but still, we still get to see them at least one more time, a couple of them.
Some opening news right now, actually, for the Seahawks. They are opening as tied for favorites for next year's Super Bowl. So positive to see. Hopefully they'll be there this time next year. But as of right now, they're listed as the number one favorite in Vegas.
Yeah.
But
now, the question real quick. Do you think this is it for Marshawn Lynch?
Yes.
And why? Just out of curiosity.
He was going to retire last year, and Cam Chancellor talked him out of it. And Marshawn Lynch is not beast mode as we know him or knew him. He's just not the guy that he was before. And I feel that's the case for a lot of running backs. You know, they hit that 29-30 mark, and they just aren't as productive. And it's a physical sport. You're getting hit every single day. And I think that's really taken an impact on him. I know he's had neck problems before, and then this year he had all those injuries. I think he calls it quits. He would have a very nice salary with the Seahawks if he stayed, but I don't think the Seahawks want that. I think the Seahawks recognize what they have in backup Thomas Rawls, and I think they'll...
Do you think they'll keep Christy Michael?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I think Fred Jackson was a good addition to their depth. I think they might add him for next year at kind of a discount price. He's a good veteran, and I think he did play some good roles on third down for the team. But as of right now, I think if Lynch doesn't retire, I think they release Lynch and he'll play for someone else. But yeah, I think Lynch just had too many injuries. He's not the same guy, and I think he knows that, and he wants to get out while he still has some sort of semblance of a, regular body that's not plagued by injuries.
And I think once he's gone, he'll probably disappear from the face of the earth, to be quite honest, because he's not much of an interview guy, and it's kind of been known.
No, but what's interesting is his clothing brands and all that stuff they kind of took off. And you see him a lot more in the media nowadays, not necessarily like press conferences and stuff, but on commercials. He was in that. He had that cameo in Black Ops 3 that was really cool. Skittles commercials, Beast Mode, his clothing line. When they had that temporary shop right before the Super Bowl, completely sold out. So
you think he'll still be in it? And
yeah, I think he'll be probably some advertising things. I think maybe he'll be involved with some hip hop artists as far as promotional things.
Oh, that would not surprise me one bit.
Yeah. But until then, I guess we will see.
Yeah, but I think it would not surprise me, but I'm not too necessarily worried because we do have a really good running game. If we go with Rawls, I think he'll be our next guy, kind of like, because obviously the running game was for the last 15 years is what really made Seattle what they are with Sean Alexander. Then when he got injured, it was a little bit of a difficult path. Who was the main guy till Marshawn Lynch?
Well, yeah, you can go back even further than Sean Alexander. You can go back to Ricky Waters.
Oh yeah,
John Kitna and Ricky Waters way back in the day. I remember those were the first Seahawks that greeted me. I think I went to some of their initial training camp practices, and actually. This is when I was little, like 5 or 6 or 7. Got to meet Kitna Waters, had him autograph of football. So, yeah, I remember those days. They definitely need some sort of running game because Russell Wilson's good, but I don't think he can do it all on his own, scrambling 24/7.
No, it's like That's what a quarterback is. You have opportunities to run the ball when you're in pressure. And I think Russell's one of those guys that can kind of handle a certain situation pretty well, unlike more than others. Like, what I've always noticed is that when he's pressured, he will usually find a way to just kind of, even if he throws it out of bounds. So then that's better than probably getting sacked or a pick. So he's kind of one of the more wise and aware quarterbacks in the NFL that has really helped Seattle and himself, for that matter, kind of.
Especially with his age, he's still a young quarterback.
He's still young and everything, and kind of like I was watching like when Wilson was the day he got drafted for Seattle, like how Gruden was saying that how he was how much of a leader and much of a different playmaker he was even when he came into Wisconsin after being in Carolina for a while back. South Carolina, I believe it was, wasn't it? No, NC State. Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. I knew it was Carolina, but I would not remember. But you had an initial thought you were going to say before we wrapped it up, before I kind of jumped into the Marshawn Lynch situation.
Oh, I was just one other thing I don't like about the Pro Bowl is that so many people opt out of it. So it's not like the elite of the elite. When you have Jameis Winston in the Pro Bowl, I mean he had a good season, I'll admit that, but he's not Pro Bowl material. He's like the 9th quarterback or something that's been given the Pro Bowl honor. Like,
you think they probably? I know Denver in the Super Bowl. You think they probably give it to Brock Osweiler? You think you would put Osweiler over Winston when it comes to Pro Bowl? Or
no, I say Winston played the whole season. Osweiler just played a backup role for a few games, so no.
Yeah.
But
who do you think out of the quarterbacks that are not named Peyton Manning or Cam Newton that would be more caliber than Winston?
Oh, definitely Cam Newton right now. Just the way he's young, he's still got all of his career left. Peyton Manning, I think this is his last game. I think.
I think I would give I would put Andy Dalton, even though he's from the AFC, over Winston. I don't know if was he even selected or even playing in the Pro Bowl, Andy Dalton?
He might have been given the honor, but his injury's keeping him out. I know that. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening to Fourth and Downtown. I'm Josh Grissom, joined with Luis the Godfather Torres. Be sure to go on to our website, www.thevandalnation.com, to catch the latest news and updates on our athletic programs. Also on Twitter, @VandalNation, and on Instagram, The Vandal Nation, to catch little snippets of athletic events around campus. Thank you very much for listening. Luis, you got any final words?
Oh, final words is February's coming up. This is it. This is it for January. Now we're already in the February, and I think it's going to get really interesting. It's going to be a very, very eventful February for Vandal Athletics, especially near Valentine's Day weekend. It's coming up when we kind of least expect it.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Have a good weekend, Vandals.
Till we meet again.